7 islands, 300 days of sunshine a year, and 16 million tourists who arrive pale and leave crispy. That's the Canary Islands. The islands belong to Spain, but sit in Africa. They are geographically African, politically European, economically duty-free, and culturally confused. No VAT here, which leads to Germans panic buying everything, like it's the last supermarket before the apocalypse. Tenerife and Gran Canaria are the main tourism giants. Lanzarote is known for its volcanic landscapes, and Fuerteventura for its dreamlike beaches. Palma, La Gomera, and Hierro are more remote and less known, but still worth a look. There are no Canaries here, by the way. The name comes from the Latin Canaria insulae, meaning island of dogs. Why? Because the Romans found large dogs here, or seals maybe. Either way, it's got nothing to do with small yellow birds. Tenerife is the largest and the most popular of the Canary Islands, with around 6 million tourists a year. Most of them British, most of them sunburned, many of them named Gary. The island is 2,034 square kilometres of lunar deserts, subtropical forests, black sand beaches, and a massive volcano right in the middle that may or may not be dormant. Tenerife is split between north and south. The north is green, wet, and where actual Canarians live. The south is dry, beige, and where all the tourism happens. You'll find fish and chips, Oasis tribute bands, and bars named things like the Red Lion, despite being 3,000 kilometres from London and having never seen a lion, red or otherwise. It's got UNESCO World Heritage Sites, 400-year-old colonial towns, and some of the clearest skies on Earth. The weather is really consistent. Eternal spring, they call it. 20 to 25 degrees Celsius year-round. It almost never rains in the south, like genuinely never. Getting here is easy. Tenerife has 2 airports, because one wasn't enough for an island you can drive across in 90 minutes. Tenerife South handles most international flights and resembles every other modern airport. Soulless, air-conditioned, full of people buying giant Toblerones for reasons nobody understands. Tenerife North is smaller, older, and has truly spectacular approach views. Santa Cruz de Tenerife is the capital of Tenerife and the co-capital of the Canary Islands. Yeah, you heard that right, co-capital. It shares the capital status with Las Palmas de Gran Canaria. Every 4 years, the regional government physically moves between the 2 cities. They pack up the entire administration and relocate to the other island. Santa Cruz sits on the northeastern coast of Tenerife, sprawling along the waterfront and creeping up into the hills. 200,000 people live here. The port is enormous, one of the busiest in Spain. The name Santa Cruz de Tenerife translates to Holy Cross of Tenerife. The city was founded in 1494 by conquistador Alonso Fernández de Lugo, who arrived in the Canary Islands with soldiers and priests. The Guanches, the indigenous people of Tenerife, were not thrilled about this arrangement. They fought back for 2 years, which is impressive considering they were using stone weapons against steel armour and muskets. But by 1496, Tenerife was under Spanish control and the Guanche population was decimated. In 1797, the British showed up with warships and ambitions. Admiral Horatio Nelson decided he'd like to add Tenerife to Britain's growing collection of islands. The plan was simple: sail into the harbour, land troops, overwhelm the Spanish defenders, and claim the Canary Islands for King George III. What could go wrong? Everything, as it turns out. The Spanish were ready. They'd fortified the harbour, positioned cannons, and were generally much better prepared than Nelson anticipated. The attack was a disaster. British troops got pinned down on the beach. The Spanish opened fire with everything they had, and Nelson, standing on deck coordinating the chaos, took a cannonball to the right arm. The Spanish, to their credit, were gracious winners. They allowed the British to withdraw with their wounded, and even sent fruit and wine to Nelson's ship so he could recover in comfort. Nelson lost an arm trying to conquer Tenerife with ships. 200 years later, the British returned with a far deadlier force, a Ryanair flight at £19 and 99 pence and 0 baggage allowance. Tenerife had no chance. Today, Santa Cruz isn't really trying to be a tourist destination. From certain angles, the city looks industrial and vaguely dystopian. From other angles, it looks Exactly the same. It has government buildings, universities, hospitals, and all the infrastructure required for actual city life. Tourism is something that happens to it occasionally. The city tolerates visitors, but doesn't cater to them. There are no Brits abroad-style pubs serving full English breakfast. No menus with pictures for people who are too lazy to read words. It's refreshing, honestly. You can walk through the city centre and hear Spanish instead of a UN General Assembly's worth of languages. The city centre is compact and walkable, assuming you don't mind hills, heat, and dodging motorbikes. Most of the interesting bits are concentrated between the port and Parque Garcia Sanabria. The main street is Avenida de Anaga, a wide boulevard full of shops, cafes, and architecture that ranges from handsome colonial buildings to 1970s concrete blocks that look like someone gave up halfway through designing them. The Auditorio de Tenerife sits on the waterfront like a giant white wave frozen mid-crash. It was designed by Spanish architect Santiago Calatrava and completed in 2003, and it's absolutely impossible to miss. The thing dominates the skyline. The auditorium hosts concerts and other performances throughout the year. The acoustics are supposedly world-class, though most visitors just take photos of the exterior and move on. You can't visit Santa Cruz without at least acknowledging San Cristobal de la Laguna, its historic neighbour 10 kilometres inland. La Laguna, as everyone calls it, is the former capital of Tenerife and a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It was founded in 1496 by the same Alonso guy who founded Santa Cruz, and it was the island's capital until 1723 when the government moved to the coast. La Laguna is everything Santa Cruz isn't: historic, charming, and full of colonial architecture that's actually been preserved rather than bulldozed for parking lots. The old town has colourful buildings and wooden balconies. The University of La Laguna was founded in 1792 and is the oldest university in the Canary Islands. The city is built on the site of a former lagoon, hence the name, which has since been drained. It sits at 550 metres elevation, which makes it noticeably cooler than Santa Cruz and prone to fog and drizzle. La Laguna's main attractions are its churches. The Cathedral of San Cristobal de la Laguna is the most important church in the Canary Islands and the seat of the Diocese of Tenerife. There are monasteries and religious buildings scattered throughout the old town. Most are closed to the public because they're still active religious communities. You'll see signs saying Clausura, which sounds like a spell from Harry Potter, but actually means closed to outsiders. Getting to La Laguna from Santa Cruz is absurdly easy thanks to the Tenerife tram, which connects the two cities in about 40 minutes. The tram is modern and runs frequently throughout the day. A single ticket will cost you around €1.50, or you can buy a rechargeable card for multiple journeys. Mount Teide rises from the centre of Tenerife like a geological middle finger to the concept of tropical island paradise. At 3,715 metres, it's the highest peak in Spain, the highest point in the Atlantic Ocean, and the third tallest volcano on Earth when measured from its base on the ocean floor. The mountain is visible from everywhere. It's always looming in the distance like a bouncer who's been quietly watching you all night and is just waiting for you to do something stupid. The Teide National Park, established in 1954, surrounds the volcano and covers 190 square kilometres. Of course, it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. UNESCO loves the Canary Islands. They hand out World Heritage status here like participation trophies. Not that Teide doesn't deserve it. The terrain is so alien that NASA has actually used it for testing Mars rovers. The park attracts over 4 million visitors a year. That makes it the most visited national park in Spain and one of the most visited in the world, which is impressive for a pile of rocks in the middle of the Atlantic. Teide itself sits inside a massive older volcanic crater called Las Cañadas, which collapsed sometime around 180,000 years ago in what must have been a truly terrible day for any wildlife in the area. The current cone started forming 150,000 years ago and has erupted multiple times since. The most recent eruption was in 1909 from a vent on the northwestern flank, not from the main summit thankfully, but still close enough that people noticed. Is Teide still active? Oh yes, absolutely. Volcanologists classify it as active but dormant, which does sound mildly threatening to me. There are monitoring stations all over the mountain measuring seismic activity, gas emissions, and ground deformation with the kind of nervous attention you'd give to a sleeping tiger. The Spanish government takes this seriously because 900,000 people live on Tenerife, and an eruption would be, to put it delicately, bad for tourism. But the odds of Teide erupting during your 2-week holiday in the Canary Islands are extremely low. You're statistically more likely to be hit by a flying beach umbrella than affected by volcanic activity. The ground here is rust red, charcoal black, and sometimes a disturbing shade of green where mineral deposits have oxidized. Lava flows stretch across the valleys in frozen waves of stone. Volcanic formations called roques were sculpted by wind and time into shapes that look almost intentional. There are no trees here and no grass, just volcanic rubble, some genuinely impressive rocks and hardy shrubs. The most famous rock formation is Roque Cinchado, also called the Stone Tree. It's a tall, thin pillar of rock that's become the unofficial symbol of Tenerife. Roque Cinchado is photogenic, certainly. It's also geologically precarious. At some point, possibly tomorrow, it's going to fall over. People have been predicting its collapse for decades, which hasn't stopped anyone from posing next to it. If anything, the impending doom makes it more popular. Getting to Teide National Park from anywhere in Tenerife is straightforward. You drive. There's no train service because Tenerife doesn't really do trains, and there's definitely no cable car from sea level because that would be expensive and probably against several laws of physics. The park is roughly an hour's drive from the southern tourist resorts like Los Cristianos and Playa de las Americas, where most visitors to Tenerife stay. It's about 90 minutes from Puerto de la Cruz in the north. The roads are good and full of rental cars driven by travellers who are absolutely not prepared for the altitude change. But be warned, people stop in the middle of the road to take photos, constantly, without warning. Without pulling over, they just stop in the middle of the lane because they saw a rock or a view or a funny-looking lizard. You start your trip at sea level, where it's 30 degrees Celsius and sunny. An hour later, you're at 2,000 meters, where it's cold and possibly snowing. Yes, snowing, in the Canary Islands. The looks on people's faces when they realize this is priceless. Entire families standing in the parking lot in beach shorts, shivering, looking betrayed. But the travel agency said eternal spring. The travel agency lied, my friend, or at least omitted key details. Welcome to Tenerife. The cable car, officially called the Teleférico del Teide, is how most people get close to the summit without actually hiking. It starts at the base station at 2,356 meters and takes you up to La Rambleta station at 3,555 meters in 8 minutes. The views during the ascent are spectacular. You can see the entire southern coast of Tenerife and your own mortality reflected in the cable car window as it sways gently in the wind. The price is 38 euros for a return ticket. That's roughly the cost of 12 drinks at a beach bar in the Canary Islands. So you're basically choosing between getting tipsy and getting altitude sickness. Both are valid holiday experiences. The cable car doesn't actually get you to the summit, but it gets you close. The true peak is another 163 meters above the upper station, and you need a special permit to hike that final bit, and that's a bureaucratic nightmare. If you want to reach the peak, you need a written permission from the national park authorities. This is not a suggestion. There are rangers, they check, and Spanish bureaucracy doesn't care if you flew all the way from Kentucky and this was your dream. No permit, no summit for you, senor. End of discussion. The permit is free, which is nice. It's also limited to 200 people per day, divided into different time slots, which is less nice. You apply online through the park's official website, often weeks or even months in advance, and hope the system doesn't crash, which it does, frequently, because this is still Spain. The altitude at Teide's summit is no joke. At 3,715 meters, the air holds 60% of the oxygen available at sea level. People who spend their entire Tenerife holiday at beach level do not adjust to this instantly. Altitude sickness here is real. You can feel headache, dizziness, shortness of breath, and a general sense that your body is staging a coup. Most people feel fine, or at least fine-ish. Some don't. If you start feeling seriously unwell, go back back down immediately. The mountain will still be there tomorrow. It's not going anywhere. Before we continue this journey, please hit the like button and subscribe to World Travel Guide. Puerto de la Cruz is Tenerife's original tourist destination. Before the south of the island became an endless stretch of all-inclusive resorts and British-themed pubs, there was Puerto de la Cruz. It sits on the north coast of Tenerife, 35 kilometers west of the capital. The town faces the Atlantic directly, which means it gets real weather. This is not the south of Tenerife, where the sun shines 340 days a year. This is the green, lush, slightly moody side of the Canary Islands. The weather is mild year-round. Winter temperatures average around 20 degrees Celsius. Summer averages 26 degrees. It's never too hot, never too cold, and almost always slightly humid. The town started as the port for La Orotava, a larger town up in the hills. In the 16th and 17th centuries, this was where goods were loaded and unloaded. By the early 20th century, Puerto de la Cruz was Tenerife's main resort town. The south of the island was still mostly barren volcanic rock, but the north had infrastructure and a certain European sophistication. This lasted until the 1960s and 70s, when developers realized the south had better weather and fewer planning restrictions. Mass tourism shifted south. Puerto de la Cruz was left with its dignity and architecture. Today, around 30,000 people live here. Unlike the southern resorts of Tenerife, which sprawl horizontally, Puerto de la Cruz has a defined centre. The town is built around the old harbour area, which is no longer used for cargo, but remains the emotional centre. Here you'll find Plaza del Charco, the main square. Charco means puddle, and the name makes sense. The square used to flood during high tides. That problem has since been solved with modern drainage. The beaches in Puerto de la Cruz are black. Playa Jardín is the main beach, located on the western edge of town. It was designed by César Manrique, the Canary Islands' most famous artist and architect. In the 1970s, the town recognized a problem. The beaches were dramatic but not always swimmable, especially in winter when the Atlantic gets moody. So they built Lago Martianes, a complex of seawater swimming pools designed by, once again, César Manrique. The man was everywhere in the Canary Islands. If it's architecturally interesting and involves lava rock, Manrique probably designed it. The nightlife in Puerto de la Cruz is not wild. The atmosphere here is more civilized. The bars stay open late, there's live music in several venues, and Plaza del Charco buzzes until midnight. But the energy is relaxed. It's the kind of nightlife where you might actually remember the evening, which, depending on your preferences, is either a selling point or deeply boring. Prices are generally lower than in the south of Tenerife, which makes Puerto de la Cruz appealing if you're trying to visit the Canary Islands without breaking the bank. Masca is often billed as the Machu Picchu of the Canary Islands. It's a tiny village on a ridge in the Tenerife Mountains, surrounded by dramatic volcanic cliffs that drop straight into the Atlantic. If you look at photos, it's paradise, but if you look at the road leading there, it's a collective nervous breakdown. For most of its history, Masca was one of the most isolated villages in Tenerife. The villagers grew crops on impossibly steep terrace slopes, raised goats that developed supernatural climbing abilities, and minded their own business in splendid geographic isolation. Until the mid-1970s, you couldn't drive there. You walked, or you took a donkey, or you just lived your entire life without ever leaving the village. Then, sometime in the mid-20th century, someone, probably a hiker who got lost and stumbled into the village by accident, realised Masca was photogenic. Word spread, and the local government realised they'd been sitting on one of Tenerife's best assets and doing absolutely nothing with it. They built the road, and suddenly Masca went from peaceful village to the reason rental car companies in Tenerife have such high insurance premiums. Let's talk about that road, because it is the main character of the Masca experience. There are sections where you'll be driving along the edge of a cliff, looking down into a gorge that's definitely deep enough to end your holiday permanently, while a massive tour bus comes barreling towards you in the opposite direction. It's a harrowing and traumatic drive. If you're the driver, try not to look down. The locals have mixed feelings about this development. On one hand, tourism money, jobs, the village survives. On the other hand, thousands of people descending every week on a settlement built for 90, filling the 2 restaurants, taking photos of your house, your goat, your grandmother, hanging laundry. Someone asks if your kitchen is open to visitors, your neighbour can't water his plants without ending up in 5 Instagram stories, and your uncle becomes local man in traditional lifestyle just because he's fixing a chair. It's like living in a very small, very vertical theme park where you can't leave because this is your actual home, but the restaurants stay open, the shop sells overpriced water to dehydrated hikers, and life continues. The villagers have made peace with their new reality, but let's be completely honest here, most people don't come to Masca for the village. They come for the Barranco de Masca, the massive gorge that cuts through the Tenno Mountains from the village down to the Atlantic Ocean. This is one of the most famous hikes in the Canary Islands. It's spectacular. It's also legitimately difficult, and absolutely not something you do on a whim after a heavy lunch. The hike is about 6 kilometers one way, descending 600 vertical meters from the village to the sea. That doesn't sound like much, but this is one of those hikes where the numbers are deeply misleading. The terrain is rocky and uneven, and you'll scramble over boulders the size of cars. At the end of the gorge, you reach Playa de Masca, a small rocky beach where the cliffs rise up on 3 sides. For years, there was a boat service that picked people up from the beach and took them back to Los Gigantes, or another coastal town. That service has been suspended. Officially, it's for environmental and safety reasons. The boats were causing erosion, and the beach couldn't handle the number of visitors. If rain is forecast, do not attempt this hike. Being caught in a narrow gorge during a rainstorm is how you end up on the evening news. Playa de las Teresitas is the most famous beach in Tenerife that shouldn't really exist. The entire beach is a lie, a beautiful, carefully constructed, government-funded lie. And the locals love it. The beach sits 7 kilometers northeast of Santa Cruz de Tenerife. The volcanic origin is why most of Tenerife's natural beaches are black, visually dramatic, but not exactly what European tourists had in mind when they booked a beach holiday to the Canary Islands. And this is where Playa de las Teresitas enters the story. In the 1970s, the Spanish government did what any reasonable government would do. They imported 270,000 tons of golden sand from the Sahara Desert, shipped across the sea from Western Sahara to Tenerife, then dumped along a 1.3 kilometer stretch of coastline near the village of San Andres. The project took years, it cost a fortune, and it worked. The beach is protected by a long breakwater. You can see it from the shore, a curved wall of rocks extending out into the Atlantic, creating a massive lagoon. The breakwater does 2 things. First, it keeps the waves calm. The Atlantic can get rough, especially in winter, and without that barrier, the beach would be a chaotic, unswimmable mess. Second, and more importantly, it keeps the sand from washing away. The water inside the breakwater is almost unnaturally calm. It's shallow, warm, and about as threatening as a bathtub. Families love it. Older folks wade in up to their knees and stand there for 20 minutes. The beach is lined with palm trees, hundreds of them, planted in neat rows along the sand, casting long shadows in the late afternoon. Getting to Playa de las Teresitas from Santa Cruz de Tenerife is easy. You take the TF11 road north, hugging the coastline. The drive takes about 15 minutes, assuming you don't get stuck behind a tour bus. There's a large car park just above the beach. Parking is free, which in the Canary Islands, where everything else will absolutely cost you, feels like a small miracle. From the car park, you walk down a short path, and there it is. Golden sand, blue water, palm trees swaying in the breeze. It's almost offensive how nice it looks. The beach itself has no resorts and no beach clubs. There are a few small stands selling snacks and drinks, and that's it. You bring your own towel and you claim a spot. It's refreshingly low-key. The Canary Islands are full of commercialized beaches where every square meter has been monetized. Playa de las Teresitas is not that. It's public and feels like it belongs to everyone, and sometimes that's enough. Los Gigantes sits on the western coast of Tenerife. The name translates to the Giants. And for once, a tourist destination isn't lying to you. The cliffs here are really massive. They rise vertically from the Atlantic to heights between 500 and 800 meters, depending on which section you're staring at. Part of Tenerife's western flank slid into the ocean millions of years ago. The result? A vertical scar of dark basalt. The town of Los Gigantes is small, purpose-built, and unapologetically touristy. About 2,500 people live here permanently. The town didn't really exist until the 1960s, when developers realized people would pay good money to stare at a wall of rock. So they built a resort. Hotels, apartments, restaurants, a marina, a small black sand beach, and precisely 0 historical landmarks of note. This is not a place you visit for culture. The Canary Islands have culture, sure, Tenerife has it, but Los Gigantes has cliffs and boats and restaurants that all serve the exact same menu. You're here for the geology and the boat tours. Everything else is just filler. Getting to Los Gigantes from the southern resorts of Tenerife takes about 40 minutes by car. From the north of the island, you're looking at over an hour. There's a bus, of course. Lines 325 and 473 connect Los Gigantes to the southern resorts. The buses are punctual and cost about €3 each way. A taxi will cost you 50 to 60 euros for the same journey. That's Tenerife math. You're paying for convenience and the privilege of not sitting next to a German family arguing in full surround sound. The cliffs are the main event. You can see them from town, from the marina, from your hotel balcony if you've paid enough. But the real way to experience Los Gigantes, the only way really, is from the water. Boat tours leave daily from the marina, 2 to 3 hours, 20 to 50 euros depending on what's included. Some offer whale and dolphin watching, which in the Canary Islands is actually legitimate. Pilot whales and bottlenose dolphins live in these waters year-round. Success rate for sightings is supposedly over 80%, though that figure comes from the tour operators themselves, so apply the usual grain of salt. The beach in Los Gigantes is called Playa de los Guillos. It's small and pebbly in places, and it's made of black volcanic sand which looks dramatic in photos, but gets hot enough to cook an egg under the Canary Islands sun. Bring sandals or embrace the pain. If you're not into boats or beaches, there's hiking. The cliffs are part of the Teide Rural Park, a protected area in the northwestern corner of Tenerife. Trails go through the mountains and along the coast. So is Los Gigantes worth visiting? If you're already in Tenerife, absolutely. The cliffs are one of the most impressive natural features in the Canary Islands. Seeing them from the water is unforgettable. The town itself? It's fine. It serves a purpose. You can base yourself here for a few days, take the boat tours, do some hiking, eat some fish, and call it a successful trip. Or you can visit for a day from the southern resorts, which is what most people do. Just don't expect anything beyond what it is. A small, modern resort town built in the shadow of some truly spectacular geology. The cliffs are the stars here. The town is just the stage. Gran Canaria is a place where retirees, ravers, hikers and honeymooners somehow coexist. It's an island with actual mountains, actual culture and actual locals if you bother to leave the resort. Nearly 1 million people live here permanently and about 4 million travellers visit every year, most of them arriving in winter to escape places where the sun is a distant memory and serotonin is rationed by the government. The island is split clean down the middle, climatically and culturally. The south is desert, relentless sunshine, 0 rain, and temperatures so stable you could set your watch by them. This is where the resorts are. Maspalomas, Playa del Inglés, Puerto Rico, places with names that promise exotic paradise and deliver all-inclusive mediocrity. Not badly, mind you, just predictably. You know exactly what you're getting. A sunbed wall at 7 in the morning, buffet scrambled eggs that have seen some things, and a poolside DJ who plays Despacito like it's still 2017. The north is a different country entirely. Las Palmas, the capital, is a real city. 500,000 people live there, work there, and go about their lives completely unaware that 40 kilometers south, someone named Trevor is currently getting his 3rd tattoo of the week. With a population of 380,000, Las Palmas is the largest city in the Canary Islands and the 9th largest in Spain. The history of Las Palmas began in 1478 when Juan Rejon, a Spanish conquistador, founded a settlement near the Guiniguada ravine. By the 16th century, it had become an important stopover for ships travelling between Europe and the Americas. Christopher Columbus himself stopped here in 1492 on his way to discover places that were already inhabited. Today, you can visit the Casa de Colón, a museum dedicated to his voyages. The old quarter of Las Palmas, known as Vegeta, is where the city's colonial past comes alive. Founded in 1478, Vegeta is the oldest neighbourhood in Las Palmas and the birthplace of the entire city. Narrow cobblestone streets and charming plazas make Vegeta the most photogenic part of Las Palmas. The Cathedral of Santa Ana dominates the neighbourhood's skyline, built in a confused mix of Gothic, Renaissance and neoclassical styles. Construction began in 1500 and took over 400 years to complete, proving that even in the Canary Islands, contractors have always been wildly optimistic with their deadlines. You can climb the cathedral's tower for panoramic views of the city. Of course, the main reason people come to Las Palmas is Las Canteras Beach. Often hailed as one of the best urban beaches in Europe, Las Canteras stretches over 3 kilometers along the western edge of the city. For once, the hype isn't complete nonsense. The beach offers golden sand and relatively calm waters. It's protected by a natural reef called La Vara, which runs parallel to the shore and keeps the waves gentle. Just perfect for families, beginners, and anyone who prefers their ocean experiences without drowning. The southern end of Las Canteras is popular with surfers when the waves pick up. The middle section is ideal for sunbathing and swimming, and the northern end, known as La Puntilla, is great for snorkelers. Las Palmas is also the economic hub of the Canary Islands. The port of La Luz, located in the heart of the city, is one of the busiest ports in the Atlantic, handling millions of tons of cargo each year and serving as a major refueling station for ships crossing between continents. This makes Las Palmas strategically important, though it also means that large sections of the city look like an industrial zone rather than a holiday destination. The port area, with its cranes, warehouses and container yards, dominates the eastern waterfront of Las Palmas. Travellers expecting a pristine island paradise are sometimes shocked to find themselves sharing the city with oil tankers and cargo ships. It's all part of the authentic Las Palmas experience, gritty, industrial and vaguely depressing in certain neighbourhoods. One of the more surreal aspects of Las Palmas is the shopping scene. Yes, people actually fly to the Canary Islands to shop. Thanks to the special tax status of the islands as a duty-free zone, electronics and luxury goods are cheaper in Las Palmas than on mainland Europe. The result, Las Palmas has become a shopping destination, with massive malls like El Muelle and Las Arenas attracting bargain hunters from across the continent. For culture vultures, Las Palmas offers a surprising number of museums. The Museo Canario, located in Vegeta, is dedicated to the history and culture of the Guanche people. The city has a public bus system called Guaguas Municipales, which connects most neighbourhoods and beaches in Las Palmas. However, like many cities that weren't designed for modern traffic, Las Palmas suffers from serious congestion. The narrow streets of Vegeta and Triana are jammed with cars, and finding parking in Las Palmas is almost impossible. Many visitors opt to walk or use taxis, especially since the city's main attractions are relatively close together. Like many cities in the Canary Islands, Las Palmas struggles with unemployment and economic inequality. The city faces a housing crisis, with property prices skyrocketing in recent years thanks to foreign buyers. Locals are increasingly being priced out of their own city, especially in desirable neighbourhoods near Las Canteras Beach. Maspalomas sits on the southern tip of Gran Canaria. If you're looking for a place where mass tourism has reached its absolute peak, congratulations, you've found it. It's a purpose-built resort destination in the municipality of San Bartolomé de Tirajana, the largest municipality on Gran Canaria by area. The history of Maspalomas is unusually short. For centuries, this part of Gran Canaria was basically a desert that nobody wanted, too dry and too hot, which, as it turns out, made it it absolutely perfect for tourism. Maspalomas was marketed as the upscale option, classier than Playa del Inglés next door. The high-end resorts, like the Lopesan Costa Meloneras and seaside Grand Hotel Residencia, offer sprawling grounds, multiple pools, gourmet restaurants, and the kind of service that makes you forget you're in a mass tourism factory on Gran Canaria. The budget options in Maspalomas are more of a gamble. Some are perfectly fine. Others are 1970s relics with walls so thin you can hear your neighbour's entire life story, and balconies that overlook other balconies in an infinite loop of architectural sadness. The undisputed star of Maspalomas is the Maspalomas Dunes, a protected nature reserve that somehow survived the concrete tsunami that consumed everything around it. These dunes stretch for several kilometres along the coast of Gran Canaria. They are made of fine golden sand that's been piling up here for thousands of years, forming rolling hills and valleys that constantly shift with the wind. The dunes cover 400 hectares and have been protected since 1987, after developers nearly destroyed them entirely in their quest to build yet another hotel. They are perfect for photography, especially at sunrise and sunset when the light creates dramatic shadows across the sand. Walking through the Maspalomas dunes is surreal. One minute you're surrounded by high-rise hotels and shopping centres. The next, you're in what looks like a desert wilderness. The illusion is somewhat shattered by the parade of beachgoers, many wearing swimsuits that are technically legal but morally questionable. The dunes are also famously popular with naturists. If you're not ready to see a collection of bodies that look like they've been left in the sun since the Franco era, maybe aim for the family-friendly section. Then again, this is the Canary Islands, where family-friendly doesn't mean safe. It just means the odds of accidentally locking eyes with a naked guy doing yoga at sunset drop from guaranteed to statistically concerning. The beach alongside the dunes is called Playa de Maspalomas, and it's really one of the best beaches on Gran Canaria. Golden sand, clear water, stretching for miles. It's everything you were promised. The European obsession with tanning reaches its peak right here. At the far western edge of the dunes stands the Faro de Maspalomas, the lighthouse that's become the symbol of Maspalomas and probably the most photographed building on Gran Canaria. Built in 1890, this 55-metre tower was designed by engineer Juan de León y Castillo. You can't go inside, which is disappointing, but you can walk around it and take 7 identical photos. Surrounding the lighthouse is a small oasis of palm trees, which provides a brief respite from the concrete dystopia that is most of Maspalomas. The interior of the island is a world away from Maspalomas. Gran Canaria is often called a miniature continent, and the Central Mountains are the reason why. The island was built by volcanoes over 14 million years, through 3 major eruptive cycles. Each one piled new material on top of the old, shaped by heat, then slowly unmade by wind and water. The result is a circular island that rises sharply from the coast toward a dense, rugged interior. The crown jewel of the mountains on Gran Canaria is Roque Nublo, a massive volcanic rock that rises 80 meters above its base and sits at an altitude of 1,813 meters above sea level. Roque Nublo, which translates to cloud rock, is one of the most iconic natural landmarks in the Canary Islands and has become the symbol of Gran Canaria's mountainous interior. It's essentially a giant stone monolith sticking out of a mountain. For the Guanches, this wasn't a geological curiosity. It was a sacred site, a place of worship, ritual, and astronomical observation. The hiking trail to Roque Nublo starts from a parking area called La Goleta, and the hike is relatively short, about 1.5 kilometers each way, with an elevation gain of around 200 meters. This makes it accessible to most people with a basic level of fitness. For those interested in serious hiking, the mountains of Gran Canaria offer plenty of challenging routes. The Camino de Santiago de Gran Canaria is a network of trails connecting various points across the island, inspired by the famous pilgrimage routes in mainland Spain. It's less about religious pilgrimage, and more about experiencing the landscapes and villages of Gran Canaria on foot. The pine forests covering the mountains of Gran Canaria are another highlight of the island's interior. The Canary Island pine is endemic to the Canary Islands and perfectly adapted to the volcanic soils and occasional droughts. These trees are incredibly resilient. They can survive forest fires, regrowing from their trunks even after being burned. Palmitos Park is a zoo and botanical garden stuck in a valley in southern Gran Canaria, 10 kilometers inland from Maspalomas. It opened in 1978, back when keeping animals in cages was considered family entertainment rather than an ethical dilemma. For nearly 30 years, the park was just there, a place to see parrots, a place to take the kids when the beach got boring. Then, in 2007, a massive forest fire swept through Gran Canaria. The fire destroyed 90% of the park. Animals died, buildings burned. It was really devastating. But instead of taking the insurance money and opening a Burger King, they rebuilt the whole thing within a year. It reopened in 2008, shinier and more expensive than ever. The park is divided into zones: the aquarium, the orchid house, the butterfly house. Everything smells vaguely of humidity and animal. You'll get used to it. You have no choice. The dolphin show is the main event. Bottlenose dolphins live in a large pool and perform several times a day. They let trainers stand on their backs like aquatic surfboards. The show lasts 20 minutes and ends with a speech about ocean conservation. Then everyone buys plastic dolphin toys from the gift shop. The irony is free. The Birds of Prey exhibition is impressive. Eagles swoop low over the audience in a controlled demonstration of how quickly they could end your life if they wanted to. An owl flies so close to your head you can feel the wind from its wings. The park is hilly, there's almost no shade. You should bring water and wear sunscreen, except that you'll be sweating through your shirt. Would I recommend it? If you're in Gran Canaria with kids, or you genuinely love birds and don't think too hard about captivity, sure, it's a solid day out. The shows are entertaining, the setting is pleasant, the park clearly tries. If you're morally opposed to zoos or you're on a budget, skip it. The entry price is steep and no amount of orchids will fix that. But if you're fine with the concept and you've got a few hours to kill, Palmitos Park delivers exactly what it promises: parrots on wheels, dolphins on command, and the chance to see a botanical garden that survived a wildfire and came back charging €35 a head, which honestly is very on brand for Spanish tourism. Puerto de Mogan is a small fishing village on the southwest coast of Gran Canaria that was too pretty for its own good. It's one of the most photographed spots on the Canary Islands, marketed as Little Venice, which is wildly optimistic, but also not entirely wrong if you ignore the lack of Renaissance architecture and gondolas. The village sits at the end of the Mogan Valley in the southwestern corner of Gran Canaria, where a steep ravine meets the Atlantic Ocean. In the 1980s, developers came here. They looked at this quiet village and saw potential. Specifically, they saw money. The plan was to build a resort, but make it charming. Canals were dug and bridges were added. It worked. Puerto de Mogan became the postcard, the place you see on travel websites with the caption, "Discover the real Gran Canaria," which is ironic because this version of Mogan is about as real as a Disney village, but it's undeniably pleasant. Getting to Puerto de Mogan requires either a car, a bus, or a boat. If you're driving from the southern resorts, it's about 30 minutes from Puerto Rico, 45 minutes from Maspalomas, and an hour from the airport. Bus number 1 runs from Puerto Rico to Puerto de Mogan regularly and costs around €3. The boat option is the most enjoyable if you don't mind committing to a timetable. Ferry services run daily from Puerto Rico and Arguineguín, taking about 40 minutes and offering views of the coastline that you absolutely cannot get from the road. The restaurants line the harbour and the canals, and they all serve more or less the same thing: fresh fish, paella, tapas, and something called mixed grill that's designed for travellers who can't decide. Prices are higher than inland because you're paying for the view and the flowers and the general vibe of eating by a canal. Many of the restaurants get daily deliveries from the fishing boats docked 20 metres away, which is about as local as it gets. There are 2 small supermarkets in the village. Prices are inflated because they know you're not driving 40 minutes to save €2 on milk. The beach here is tiny, and I mean tiny. It's a small crescent of imported golden sand, maybe 100 meters long, wedged between the marina and a breakwater. If the main beach is full, and it will be, there's a smaller beach just outside the port called Playa de Mogan. It's rockier and favoured by locals who've given up on the tourist beach entirely. The village also offers boat trips, dolphin watching, submarine tours, fishing charters, and sunset cruises that come with the promise of romance. The dolphin tours are popular. You board a catamaran, sail out into the Atlantic, and hope to see bottlenose dolphins or pilot whales. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. Either way, you've paid €40 and you're on a boat, so you make peace with it. Fuerteventura is the second largest of the Canary Islands, sitting just south of Lanzarote. It's the oldest of the islands, which means its volcanic features have eroded over time. There are fewer dramatic cones and more flattened landscapes. The island has been worn down by wind and time, so instead of sharp volcanic drama, Fuerteventura offers space. Wide, open, uninterrupted space. Hills rather than mountains, plains rather than valleys, and beaches, endless beaches, over 150 kilometers of them. Tourism in Fuerteventura is substantial, though slightly less theatrical than elsewhere in the Canary Islands. Around 3 million visitors arrive annually, which is impressive for an island that appears to offer fewer obvious attractions. No giant theme parks dominating the narrative, no overly dense urban centres, just coastline and wind doing the heavy lifting. And the wind does a lot of lifting. Fuerteventura is the windiest Canary Island, which makes it a global hotspot for windsurfing and kitesurfing. Places like Coralejo and Sotavento attract people who actively seek conditions that most holidaymakers try to avoid. Watching someone voluntarily attach themselves to a large piece of fabric and launch into the Atlantic is, if nothing else, memorable. Coralejo, the famous windsurfing and kitesurfing destination, sits on the northern tip of Fuerteventura, staring across the water at Lanzarote. There is no airport here. If you want to fly directly into town, you're out of luck. The nearest airport is Fuerteventura Airport, 40 kilometers south, near Puerto del Rosario. From there, you take a bus or a hire car. Coralejo is divided, roughly speaking, into the old town and the new town, though old is relative here. We're talking a typical Canary Islands fishing village from the 1960s that got a facelift and several thousand hotel rooms. The old town clusters around the port and retains some charm. The new town sprawls southward along the coast in an endless parade of hotels and apartment complexes. This is purpose-built tourism infrastructure, functional and soulless. You'll find everything you need: supermarkets, pharmacies, ATMs, and places selling inflatable flamingos. The vibe is decidedly international. You'll hear more German and English than Spanish in most establishments. Coralejo has more restaurants than any town of 16,000 people reasonably needs. Most of them are mediocre, some are actively bad, a handful are really good, but finding them requires effort and local knowledge. Coralejo's beaches are legitimately world-class, and no amount of cynicism can diminish that fact. The town beach, Playa de Coralejo, runs along the northern edge of town and is perfectly serviceable. The sand is pale, the water is clear, and it's within stumbling distance of your hotel. It gets crowded, especially near the centre, where sunbeds are packed in like Tetris blocks, but if you walk 10 minutes in either direction, you'll find some space. Flag Beach, just south of town, is the main kitesurfing hub. On any given day between October and April, you'll see dozens of kites in the air, and people being dragged across the water at speeds that look dangerous. The real attraction, though, lies just south of town, the Parque Natural de Coralejo. This is a protected area covering 26 square kilometers of sand dunes and coastline. The dunes stretch for 11 kilometers and rise up to 50 meters in some places. They're pale gold, rippled by wind, and look exactly like the Sahara Desert, which makes sense because the sand literally blew over from North Africa. It's a beautiful landscape, and the contrast between the dunes and the turquoise Atlantic is somewhat striking. Entry to the park is free because it's a protected natural area, and charging admission would be both logistically difficult and politically awkward. Just don't walk too far inland without proper navigation. The dunes all look the same, and getting disoriented is easier than you'd think. Puerto del Rosario, the capital of Fuerteventura, doesn't need an introduction, mostly because nobody's heard of it. Back in the day, it was called Puerto de Cabras, Port of Goats. In 1956, they renamed it Puerto del Rosario. Suddenly, we've got religion, mystery, and a bit of poetry. Same goats, better marketing. This is the least exciting capital city in all of Spain, which is saying something because Spain has over 50 provincial capitals and some of them are aggressively boring. The airport is only 5 kilometers from the town centre. Budget airlines love this place. They treat Fuerteventura like a second home, which means flights are cheap and legroom is a distant memory. The city itself is flat and very walkable. No dramatic hills, no confusing layout, just streets and roundabouts. The harbour area, Puerto Deportivo, has been somewhat modernised in recent years. There's a small marina with a handful of yachts. It's pleasant enough, though calling it vibrant would be a stretch. The beaches near the town are not the island's best, but they are fine. Playa Blanca, just south of the town, is quiet, and it lacks the kite surfing circus that dominates the northern beaches. Playa Chica, closer to the port, is smaller and more sheltered. At the southern end you'll find the Parque Escultórico, an open-air sculpture park featuring over 100 works by artists from around the world. One sculpture appears to be a giant rusty corkscrew, another might be a deconstructed bicycle, or possibly a commentary on post-industrial decay, or possibly just some scrap metal someone couldn't be bothered to bin. But it's free, it's outdoors, and it gives you something to do. If you want a slice of real Canary Islands life, away from the all-inclusive resort bubble, Puerto del Rosario delivers. The town is authentic in the way that only places ignored by tourism can be. Fuerteventura is the driest of the Canary Islands, and Betancuria sits right in the arid interior. This village of 700 people was the island's capital for over 400 years. The name comes from Jean de Betancourt, a Norman knight who conquered Fuerteventura in 1404. Yes, a Frenchman conquered part of the Canary Islands for Spain. He arrived with a small army and a name that the locals immediately gave up trying to pronounce correctly. He defeated the indigenous Majos, claimed the island for the crown of Castile, and founded Betancuria. Betancourt built the capital where pirates can't see it from their ships, and for a while, it worked. For a while. In 1593, the Berber pirate Havana Reyes and his crew did the impossible. They found Betancuria, they marched inland, sacked the town, burned the church, and left with everything valuable, which, to be fair, probably wasn't much. Still, the raid was devastating. Today, Betancuria is one of the most visited villages in the Canary Islands, which sounds impressive, until you realise the competition includes places called Costa Calma, where the main attraction is a spa supermarket. Still, Betancuria has earned its tourist status. The approach to the village is impressive. You drive through the mountains and the road winds down into the valley. The Church of Santa Maria is the main attraction. It's the oldest church in the Canary Islands. The current building dates mostly from the 17th century, after the pirate incident. The surrounding area is part of the Betancuria Rural Park, a protected natural area covering a significant part of the island's interior. The landscape is volcanic, and the mountains are bare. This is the least touristy part of the Canary Islands, and that's exactly why it's worth visiting. There are several walking trails around Betancuria, ranging from easy strolls to more challenging hikes. If you're spending a week in Coralejo or Morrojable and you're starting to feel like a rotisserie chicken, a trip to Betancuria is a solid choice. Morrojable sits at the southern tip of Fuerteventura, and it's everything Betancuria isn't. Loud, beachy, tourist-packed, and utterly committed to the idea that holidays should involve sunburn. This is where people go when they want to turn off their brain, turn on airplane mode, and spend a week doing absolutely nothing productive. Morrojable is part of the larger municipality of Pajara, which covers the entire southern peninsula of Fuerteventura. The area is also known as Jandía. The town itself has around 8,000 permanent residents. Playa del Matoral is the main beach, stretching for several kilometers along the southern coast. This is one of the best beaches in the Canary Islands and one of the longest in Fuerteventura. The water is warm, the waves are gentle, and the conditions are perfect for swimming or paddling. At the eastern end of the beach sits the Faro de Morro Havler, a lighthouse that's become the unofficial symbol of the town. The lighthouse marks the edge of the developed area. Beyond it, the coastline gets wilder and rockier. Tourism is everything here. The hotels range from budget-friendly apart-hotels to all-inclusive resorts, where you can spend an entire week without ever leaving the complex or experiencing anything remotely local. The harbour area, the old fishing port, is one of the few parts of the town that feels somewhat authentic. There are still a few fishing boats, though they're vastly outnumbered by tourist ferries. You can catch a boat from here to Gran Canaria. If you've never tried kite surfing, this is a good place to learn. There are several schools, and the instructors are patient, multilingual, and used to teaching people whose only previous athletic achievement was walking to the fridge without getting out of breath. Have you done any water sports before? I once opened my eyes in the shower. Perfect, you're ready. Lanzarote is one of those places that people describe as otherworldly, which usually means there is a lot of volcanic ground and not enough shade. The island lies furthest east among the Canary Islands. It is smaller than Tenerife or Gran Canaria, with a population of 155,000, and yet it receives somewhere in the region of 3 million visitors a year, which is an impressive ratio of tourists to available volcanic surfaces. Clearly, something is working. Why is Lanzarote different? Good question. It looks different first. Large parts of the island were shaped by volcanic eruptions in the 18th century, most notably between 1730 and 1736, when the island underwent a rather comprehensive geological update. The result is a landscape of black lava fields and craters that appear less Mediterranean getaway and more science fiction location scout having a productive day. There is also the matter of simplicity. Lanzarote does not overwhelm with options. It offers a clear set of experiences and delivers them consistently. For many travellers, this is not a limitation, it is the point. Arrecife is the capital of Lanzarote, which sounds important, but also gives the impression of something grander than what actually unfolds on arrival. Capitals tend to carry expectations. Arrecife responds with mild efficiency and a working harbour. It's a port city on the east coast of the island, home to 60,000 people, with a series of small inlets, lagoons and beaches stitched into its urban fabric. Getting to Arrecife is unavoidable if you're flying into Lanzarote. The airport is only 5 kilometers from the city centre. You'll pass through Arrecife whether you like it or not, unless you take some truly creative detours. Buses connect the city to the rest of the island, though schedules require attention rather than blind trust. Car rental remains the most efficient option for exploring Lanzarote properly. Roads are good and distances are short. Most visitors land at the airport, drive straight through Arrecife without stopping, and head farther south, where the hotels are. The airport opened in 1946, originally as a military airstrip, later becoming the gateway for mass tourism. But while the rest of Lanzarote transformed into a carefully curated volcanic theme park, thanks to Cesar Manrique and his crusade against architectural ugliness, Arrecife just built concrete block apartments. Most visitors are independent travellers, business visitors, and people arriving late or leaving early due to flight schedules. The city is a base, though not the most obvious one. Is it beautiful? In parts. The lagoon, the castles, the seafront promenade at sunset, these have their moments. The rest is an ordinary city with all the aesthetic compromises that entails. But sometimes that's more interesting than another whitewashed Canary Islands resort village with fake charm and real prices. There are 2 small beaches in Arrecife. Playa del Reducto is the main one, a stretch of golden sand just south of the city centre, backed by a promenade and protected by a breakwater. It's popular with locals, especially families. Playa del Cavla is smaller and less visited. It's next to the commercial port, which gives it an industrial backdrop that won't win any beauty contests. Arrecife has a small but active cultural scene. The Teatro Insular hosts plays and performances. Most are in Spanish, which limits the tourist appeal, but makes for an authentic experience if you speak the language. There are also occasional festivals, Carnival in February, local fiestas throughout the year, and events tied to the island's history and traditions. La Hierro is the famous wine-producing region in central Lanzarote. The eruptions of 1730 to 1736 would be considered a conclusive ending for most agricultural systems. In the Canary Islands, however, this became a starting point, not by choice, by necessity, which tends to produce more interesting results. The terrain is composed largely of picon, a black volcanic ash that absorbs moisture from the air and reduces evaporation. The landscape is covered in thousands of shallow craters, each one holding a single vine. Around each crater there is a semicircular stone wall. Repeat this several thousand times, and you have La Hierro. So how does it actually work? Each vine is planted deep into the ash until reaching soil. The ash traps moisture, the walls reduce wind exposure, which in Lanzarote is not a minor detail but a daily condition. The system is efficient and visually confusing to first-time visitors who are expecting rows of vines behaving normally. Historically, this method developed because nothing else did. Traditional agriculture failed after the eruptions. Over time, this system proved stable enough to expand. Entire vineyards in La Hierro were established using this pit and wall method. The landscape that we see today is the result of repeated application of this technique over generations, not a single design moment. The main crop selected for this system was Malvasia grape, a variety well suited to dry climates and volcanic soils. Tourism in La Hierro is structured but not intensive. There are no large resorts within the wine region itself. Visitors arrive by car, bus, bicycle or guided tour. Movement is linear. Stop, observe, continue. Infrastructure supports this pattern without expanding beyond it. Cycling routes pass through the region, though the wind in Lanzarote can make it difficult to ride a bike. Accommodation within La Hierro itself is limited. There are rural houses and a few small stays. Most visitors stay elsewhere in Lanzarote and visit the wine region as part of a day trip. Playa Blanca sits at the southernmost tip of Lanzarote. The name translates to white beach, which is accurate in the most literal sense. There is a beach. It is white. Well, more beige-white. But Playa Beige doesn't have quite the same marketing appeal. Playa Blanca used to be a fishing village, and the town has done a decent job preserving some charm. There are no high-rise hotels blocking the sun. There are low-rise apartment complexes, villa rentals, a pleasant marina, and the kind of quiet atmosphere that appeals to couples over 50. The town is built along the coast, naturally, with the old harbour on the eastern side and the newer Marina Rubicon on the western edge. Between them runs a long seaside promenade, the Paseo Maritimo, which is the town's main artery and the place where everyone walks off their dinner every evening. It stretches for 3 kilometres. Playa Blanca is also the departure point for ferries to Fuerteventura. The crossing takes about 25 minutes and drops you in Corralejo. The nightlife here is, to put it gently, not the reason you come here. There is live music, there are quiz nights and karaoke sessions that attract a very specific demographic. But if you're looking for clubs, or anything resembling an actual party, you're in the wrong town. If you want something more dramatic, you need to head east to the Papagayo beaches. The Papagayo area is a protected natural park consisting of several small coves tucked between volcanic cliffs. The beaches here, Playa Mujeres, Playa del Pozo and Playa de Papagayo, are the real deal. You'll find turquoise water and golden sand. The downside? You have to pay to enter the park by car, the road is unpaved and moderately terrible, and there are no facilities. No bars, no sunbed rentals, no showers, just nature. You can also walk there. It takes about an hour from the town centre, mostly along dirt paths. Timanfaya National Park is 51 square kilometers of volcanic wasteland on the western side of Lanzarote. It's the island's most famous attraction. Nothing grows here, nothing lives here, and if you tried to walk across it unsupervised, you'd either get lost, fall into a fissure, or burst into flames, possibly all three. The park sits in the municipalities of Hierro and Tinajo, covering a quarter of Lanzarote's western flank. It's a protected area and a UNESCO Biosphere Reserve. It's also one of the most controlled tourist experiences you'll have in the Canary Islands. You can't hike it or explore it freely. You can't even walk on most of it. You get on a bus and you're driven around a scripted route for 40 minutes, while a recording explains what you're seeing in 5 languages. Then you leave. That's Timanfaya. It's frustrating if you're the kind of person who wants to wander and explore, but the restrictions are there for a reason. This place is fragile, still geothermally active, and also covered in volcanic rock sharp enough to shred your shoes and ankles. The park's existence is the result of one of the longest volcanic eruptions in recorded history. We know about the 1730s eruptions in unusual detail because the local priest, Don Andres Lorenzo Cabello, wrote everything down. His account is terrifying and reads like a disaster movie screenplay. The earth suddenly opened. Enormous mountains rose from the ground. The lava rolled like torrents of fire. He watched his world end in real time and took notes. Respect. The park entrance is on the LZ67 road, 20 minutes north of Hierro and 30 minutes from Puerto del Carmen. There's one road in and it's the same road out. You can't miss it. There are also tour buses and rental cars. You can drive yourself to the park, which most people do. Parking is free, but once you're there, your car stays in the car park. You're not driving into the park. Nobody is, except the official tour buses. This is non-negotiable. The park is protected, and the roads inside are restricted. La Gomera is the second smallest of the Canary Islands, and the one where people communicate by whistling at each other across valleys. Yes, whistling. Entire conversations. Full grammatical sentences about crop yields and whose goat escaped. If that sounds like a made-up story, I understand your skepticism, but it's real, it's UNESCO protected, and it's called Silbo Gomero. Welcome to the strangest Canary Island. La Gomera sits between Tenerife and El Hierro, 32 kilometers west of Tenerife's southern coast. You can see Mount Teide from almost anywhere on the island. It measures 370 square kilometers, is roughly circular and extremely vertical. 21,000 people live here permanently, scattered across deep ravines and cliff-edge villages that look like they were built by people who'd never heard of construction permits or safety regulations. Among the Canary Islands, La Gomera has managed to resist mass tourism through a combination of geographic inconvenience and limited infrastructure. There's a small airstrip near Playa de Santiago that takes tiny propeller planes from Tenerife, but most visitors arrive by ferry. The island is volcanic, like all the Canary Islands, but older than Tenerife and much more eroded. La Gomera emerged from the Atlantic 12 million years ago, which makes it middle-aged in geological terms. The volcanic activity stopped millions of years ago, so there are no dramatic black lava fields or smoking craters. Instead, erosion has carved the island into a series of deep ravines radiating from the central peak like spokes on a wheel. These ravines, called barrancos, are the defining feature of the landscape. Some are over 1,000 meters deep, with near-vertical walls and microclimates that change every few hundred meters. The central plateau is covered in ancient laurel forest that's permanently shrouded in mist. The northern coast is green, steep and wet. The southern coast is dry, sunny and lined with cliffs that drop straight into the ocean. Driving across La Gomera means constantly climbing out of one ravine and descending into another. It's beautiful, but terrible for anyone prone to car sickness. Your navigation will cheerfully tell you that your destination is 15 kilometers away and should take 20 minutes, but it will take an hour. You'll spend 45 minutes of that hour in first gear, wondering if your rental car is going to give up entirely and just roll backwards into the Atlantic. La Gomera was originally inhabited by the Guanches, specifically a group called the Gomeros. Like the Bimbaches on El Hierro and the Guanches on Tenerife, they were of Berber origin and somehow reached the Canary Islands, despite having absolutely no seafaring technology. How did they get here? Nobody knows. What we do know, the Gomeros lived in caves, kept goats, and developed Silbo Gomero. You couldn't shout across a barranco. The distance was too great, the wind too strong, and frankly, you'd pass out from the effort. But you could whistle. The Silbo allowed them to send complex messages over distances of up to 5 kilometers. By the 20th century, it was dying out. Modern roads, telephones, and the general decline of rural life meant fewer people needed to whistle across valleys. Then, in 1999, the government of the Canary Islands made Silbo Gomero a mandatory subject in schools. Suddenly, every child on La Gomera was spending 2 hours a week learning to whistle football results instead of, I don't know, learning useful skills like computer programming or how to fix the island's terrible roads. San Sebastián de la Gomera is the capital, the main ferry port, and the first thing most visitors see when arriving on the island from other parts of the Canary Islands. It's a small town with a population of 9,000, stretched along the eastern coast. Christopher Columbus stopped here, twice actually. In 1492, before sailing off to accidentally discover the Americas, and again in 1493 on his second voyage. He stopped in San Sebastián to repair ships, and allegedly conduct an affair with Beatriz de Bobadilla, the island's governor. The affair is historically disputed, meaning there's no hard evidence, just centuries of gossip. But the Canary Islands tourism industry has been absolutely dining out on it for 500 years. The house where Beatriz supposedly lived is now a museum. Most visitors are day trippers from Tenerife who arrive on the morning ferry, rent a car, drive to Valle Gran Rey or Garahonai, take some photos, and leave on the evening ferry. If you stay overnight, you'll have the town mostly to yourself. La Gomera doesn't do nightlife at all. There are a few bars in Valle Gran Rey that stay open late-ish, mostly serving the German expat community and playing reggae or world music at volumes that wouldn't disturb a sleeping infant. San Sebastián also has a handful of quiet bars near the harbour where locals watch sports. Valle Gran Rey, on the western coast, is La Gomera's tourist hub. This is as busy as the Canary Islands' second smallest island gets. The valley is wide and descends from the central plateau to the sea in a series of terraced slopes covered in banana plantations. Valle Gran Rey has a long-standing reputation as La Gomera's alternative community, and by extension, the alternative corner of the Canary Islands. In the 1970s and 80s, it attracted hippies, dropouts, and spiritual seekers. They built houses, grew vegetables, established communes, and created a counterculture enclave that still exists today. Vallehermoso, on the northern coast, is the island's agricultural centre and one of the greenest, wettest parts of the Canary Islands. It's a large municipality covering the northern ravines and valleys. The Roque Cano is the town's defining landmark. You can't miss it. It's a 200-metre high column of basalt dominating the skyline, visible from almost everywhere in the valley. You can't climb it, it's sheer on all sides, and anyone who's tried has either failed or died, which discourages repeat attempts. But you can admire it from the town and hike around its base. Garahonai National Park is why La Gomera was declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1986, and it's the main reason nature-focused travellers visit the island. The park covers 40 square kilometres in the centre of La Gomera, protecting one of the largest remaining areas of laurel forest in the world. La Gomera is legitimately the best Canary island for hiking. The island has over 600 kilometres of marked trails, many of them ancient paths that connected villages before roads existed. Hiking here isn't optional, it's the main activity, possibly the only activity if you're not into diving or lying on beaches. If you don't enjoy walking, La Gomera will bore you into a coma within 48 hours. You'll sit in your apartment, stare at the walls, maybe watch Spanish television you don't understand, and wonder why you didn't just go to Tenerife, where at least there's a water park. La Palma is the 5th largest of the Canary Islands, and the one that most recently tried to kill everyone living on it with a volcanic eruption. In 2021, the Cumbre Vieja volcano erupted for 85 days straight, destroyed over 3,000 buildings, buried entire neighbourhoods under lava, and reminded everyone that living on an active volcanic island in the Atlantic comes with certain side effects. But the local tourism board would really prefer you focus on the nickname La Isla Isla Bonita, the pretty island, and not think too much about the part where the ground opens up and spews lava for 3 months. La Palma measures 708 square kilometers, making it roughly mid-sized by Canary standards. It's not tiny like El Hierro or La Gomera, but it's not massive like Tenerife either. 85,000 people live here permanently, or at least they did before the volcano buried a few thousand homes. The island is extremely vertical and almost entirely composed of volcanic cones, craters, ridges and slopes that make you question whether humans should live here at all. But they do. They have for centuries. La Palma is volcanic, aggressively, violently, recently volcanic. The entire island is basically a pile of lava that's been accumulating for about 2 million years. The northern part of the island is older and heavily eroded. The southern part is younger, more active, and home to the Cumbre Vieja Ridge, a volcanic spine running north to south. Among the Canary Islands, La Palma has the most dramatic elevation change relative to its size. You go from sea level to over 2,400 meters in less than 10 kilometers. The roads here are narrow and winding. They're not as terrifying as La Gomera's roads, but they're still challenging. As already mentioned, Cumbre Vieja erupted most recently starting September 19th, 2021. Not a minor eruption, a full, devastating 85-day-long eruption that produced lava flows, pyroclastic material, toxic gases, and spectacular footage that went viral on social media while actual people lost their homes. The eruption destroyed 1,600 hectares of land, buried entire banana plantations, eliminated roads, and created a new coastline where lava met the Atlantic and solidified. Over 7,000 people were evacuated. Most of them could eventually return. Some came back to find their homes completely gone, replaced by black rock that was liquid 3 months earlier. The eruption finally stopped in December 2021. The island started recovering, which in practical terms means clearing roads and pretending everything's fine for the tourists. And it mostly is fine, if you define fine as the volcano stopped and probably won't erupt again for a while. The southern part of the island now has fresh lava fields, new volcanic cones, and a landscape that looks like Mordor. You can visit the exclusion zone and see the destruction. It's educational, sobering, and deeply weird. Tourism is growing but still modest compared to Tenerife or Gran Canaria, the mass market giants of the Canary Islands. La Palma attracts around 200,000 travellers per year, mostly hikers and stargazers. The 2021 eruption caused a drop in tourism, but numbers have recovered. Most accommodation is small-scale, family-run, and concentrated around Santa Cruz. The prices are reasonable, 50 to 100 euros per night, depending on size and season. Many casas rurales are in remote locations up winding dirt roads, which is part of the appeal if you value isolation. Santa Cruz de la Palma is the island's capital and the main port. It's a small city with a population of 15,000. The old town is charming in that specific Spanish colonial way. Colourful buildings with wooden balconies, narrow cobbled streets, small plazas with churches, and a waterfront promenade where people walk in the evenings because walking is free and there's not much else to do. It's photogenic and manageable. There is a replica of Columbus's ship, the Santa Maria, docked in the harbour. You can walk across the entire historic centre in 15 minutes, which is either convenient or disappointing, depending on your expectations. La Palma's economy depends on bananas and tourism, in that order. Banana plantations cover the eastern slopes, terraced and irrigated, producing small sweet bananas that are protected by EU regulations and sold as Plátano de Canarias. The bananas are genuinely better than the massive flavourless ones from Central America that dominate supermarkets. They are smaller and have actual flavour. The European Union pays subsidies to Canary Islands banana farmers to keep the industry viable, which annoys economists who believe in free markets and delights farmers who enjoy getting paid. The food on La Palma is traditional Canarian with local specialties. Queso Palmero is a smoked goat cheese with protected status, produced using traditional methods. Honey production is significant, with several varieties depending on the flowers: chestnut honey, avocado honey, and tahinaste honey from the native plants. A major attraction is the Roque de los Muchachos Observatory, built at 2,426 meters on the island's highest peak. This is one of the world's premier astronomical observatories, home to some of the largest telescopes on Earth. Why here? Because La Palma has almost no light pollution and over 300 clear nights a year. The entire island is a UNESCO starlight reserve, which means streetlights are regulated and outdoor lighting is kept to a minimum. The island's beaches are well, let's be honest, they're not the Maldives. This is a volcanic island, which means black sand, rocky shores, and waves that really don't mess around. The most accessible beach is Playa de los Cancajos, near the airport. It's small, black, and has some low-rise apartments. Weather on La Palma is mild year-round, typical for the Canary Islands. The highlands are cooler, especially in winter, when temperatures at Roque de los Muchachos can drop below freezing, and snow occasionally appears, which confuses tourists who came expecting eternal sunshine. The east coast is greener and wetter, receiving rain from clouds that blow in from the Atlantic and get trapped against the mountains. The west coast is drier and sunnier, sheltered by the central peaks. La Palma isn't for everyone. If you want nightlife, shopping, or a beach club with DJ sets, go literally anywhere else in the world. The roads are difficult, the weather can turn, the infrastructure is basic. But stand on the edge of the caldera at sunrise or watch the stars from Roque de los Muchachos, and you'll understand why some travelers fall completely in love with La Palma. El Hierro is the smallest, quietest, and most westerly of the Canary Islands. It's the furthest southwest you can go in Spain without technically leaving Spain. It's also the one nobody's heard of, unless they're either a marine biologist or someone who got very lost on Google Maps while searching for Tenerife. The island measures just 278 square kilometers. There are no nightclubs, no mega resorts, no British stag parties vomiting into the sea at midnight. El Hierro rather focuses on renewable energy and underwater volcanoes. For centuries, El Hierro was considered the end of the known world. The meridian of El Hierro, established in the 2nd century by Ptolemy, was the prime meridian for European maps until Greenwich stole the title in 1884. The name El Hierro means the iron in Spanish, though there's no significant iron here. El Hierro is volcanic, extremely volcanic. The whole island is essentially a pile of lava that emerged from the Atlantic 1 million years ago. It's the youngest of the Canary Islands, which in geological terms makes it a teenager, occasionally explosive and still growing. The most recent eruption happened in 2011, not on land but underwater, just off the coast near La Restinga. For months, the sea bubbled, turned strange colours and spat out dead fish. Scientists monitored it nervously. Residents were evacuated. The eruption created a new underwater volcano about 300 meters tall. Then it stopped. The volcano is still there, lurking beneath the surface like a geological time bomb. The island itself is shaped like an upside-down triangle. The landscape here is strange and varied. The north is green and misty, covered in ancient laurel forests that look like the set of a fantasy film. The south is dry and barren, dotted with volcanic cones and lava fields. The west has cliffs that drop straight into the ocean, and the east has, well, the east has the airport and not much else. There are hiking trails everywhere. Some are well marked. Others are trails in the sense that someone walked here once. The most famous hike is the Camino de Hinama, a cobbled path that descends from the Central Highlands down to El Golfo Valley. This is a massive amphitheatre-shaped valley on the northwest coast that was formed 130,000 years ago when half a mountain collapsed into the sea. Yes, half the island just fell off. Landslides are a recurring theme here. Getting to El Hierro requires effort. Among the Canary Islands, it's the hardest to reach. There are no direct international flights and no cruise ships, no ferries from mainland Spain. You have to island hop. There are two options, fly or float. The airport, charmingly named El Hierro Airport, has one runway and connects to Tenerife and Gran Canaria via Binta Canarias, a regional airline that flies tiny propeller planes. The flights are short and bumpy. From Tenerife north, the flight takes takes about 35 minutes. From Gran Canaria, it's 40 minutes. Binter operates multiple flights daily, though schedules vary by season. The name Hierro might sound like it's about some kind of identity journey, but no, it's just a bus company. The bus service connects the main towns, Valverde, Frontera, and La Restinga, but the schedule is limited. Buses run a few times a day, and if you miss one, you're waiting hours for the next. The capital of El Hierro is Valverde, which makes it the only Canary Island capital not located on the coast. Why? Because of pirates. For centuries, coastal towns across the Canary Islands were regularly raided, so the locals built their capital inland up a hill surrounded by fog. It's a practical decision that results in a town with no beach and no reason to visit unless you need a government office or a pharmacy. La Restinga, on the southern tip, is the island's main diving hub. It's a small fishing village with a harbour and a reputation among divers as one of the best spots in Europe, if not the world. The Mar de las Calmas Marine Reserve, just offshore, is a protected area filled with rays and barracudas. There are beaches on the island, technically, but they're small, rocky, and often inaccessible. Most swimming on El Hierro happens in natural pools. The island has several, carved into the volcanic rock by erosion and filled by the sea. Weather-wise, El Hierro is mild year-round. Temperatures hover between 18 and 25 degrees Celsius, which is typical for the Canary Islands. It rains more in the north, barely at all in the south. Tourism here is niche. Among the Canary Islands, El Hierro gets the fewest visitors, around 11,000 per year. You won't find package holiday crowds or all-inclusive resorts. You'll find German hikers and Spanish weekenders. Accommodation is limited. There are small hotels and some rural guest houses. The vibe is low-key, borderline austere. If you want luxury, this is not your island. If you want quiet walks, strange geology, and the feeling that you've reached somewhere truly remote, El Hierro delivers. Have you ever visited the Canary Islands? Let me know your thoughts and experiences in the comments. If you loved this video, please hit the like button and subscribe to World Travel Guide.